And I know I say that often, but the reason that I'm so excited about this particular topic is because I think it is one of the core arguments against the goodness or the reality of the Christian God concept. Now, that's something else I've said often. So, what I think I need to do is a tier list of sorts of all of the arguments against God, the really weak ones, the awful ones, some that are in the middle, and then a very top tier. This would be top tier.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the Morgan Doobie Show. On today's episode, I'm going to destroy this top tier argument for atheism.
Boom.
I want to talk about this YouTuber named Brandon, channel named Mindshift, who essentially just bashes God, the Bible, and Christianity in every episode. Literally, that's all he does. What bothers me so much about Brandon is he seems like he's a pretty intelligent dude, but he's totally allowing his personal bias to control his intellectual capabilities, which I think is very obvious, in particular this episode, because his arguments are very surface level. They make sense at first glance, which is why I'm sure he accepted his argument to be so true and presented it so factually. But if you think about it, if you dig just a little deeper, it completely unravels. So I thought we would look at one of his videos called The Deception Dilemma, and I'll explain what Brandon gets wrong.
Today, I want to talk about the ability for God's creation to be deceived. This very concept, this very allowance absolutely obliterates the idea of free will, the idea of a fair and just God, of God's punishments being correct, and of him being a good father.
Okay, so let's break down Brandon's main argument, which is because us humans have the ability to be deceived, that obliterates free will, means God isn't fair nor just, his punishments aren't fair or just, and he isn't a good father. First, let's talk about free will. Ultimately, free will is the ability to make choices, the fact that we can make decisions, regardless of deception. Like, yes, deception can certainly influence what choices we make, but it doesn't negate the fact that we have choice. It doesn't take away our ability to make choices, make decisions. Think of it this way. Let's think of it like driving with a GPS. The GPS in this analogy is God. So the GPS knows which route or even routes we can take to make it to our final destination. It can provide us with suggestions for what the fastest or best route is. Similarly, God provides us with the Bible, which gives us pretty explicit instructions for how to live life in the most morally sound, best way possible to make it to our final destination. But here's the thing, just because the GPS gives us the suggested route, it doesn't force us to take that route. It doesn't force us to take any route. We are free to choose whatever route we want. We could take a left, we could take a right, we could even drive backwards, but we still ultimately have the free will to make whatever choice we want. Let's go back to the GPS analogy and throw deception into the mix. Say you stop at a gas station and ask someone for directions, and just to be a jerk, they give you false information. They purposefully give you wrong directions. It's still your choice whether or not you listen to them. You don't have to choose the directions that they gave you. In the same way, the fact that we have the ability to be deceived in life, it doesn't negate the fact that we still have the ability to choose, to make decisions. We still have free will, regardless of whether or not deception is present. The whole reason God gave us free will is because he loves us so much. He wants us to come to him willingly, to choose a relationship with him willingly. Because if he didn't, then he would just make us his slaves and force us to do what he wants us to do. But that's not love, and God obviously knows that. It's why he granted us free will in the first place. We know that we have free will. I, being a recovering drug addict, know very well that I have free will. Nobody forced me to take drugs, just like nobody forced me to get clean and sober. My sobriety is completely dependent on the fact that I have to wake up every single day wanting my sobriety more than anything on the planet, or else I will die. Like literally my life is on the line. I have to always make sure that my willpower is on point, is conducive to my recovery. Our ability to be deceived, it doesn't affect God being fair or just either, because those are things that are inherently God's nature. So whether or not we can be deceived really has no bearing on, it doesn't change God's nature. Think of it this way. Imagine there is a really fair and just teacher who gives his or her students an exam. Say that there are some students who decide to cheat on that exam. They're being deceptive. That doesn't change the nature of the teacher's fairness or the teacher being fair or just. It has absolutely no bearing on that whatsoever. And lastly, God being a good father or not being a good father, because humans can be deceived. Anyone knows that, actually, the other day I saw online a Dr. Phil episode where this mother had just totally destroyed her son. She was so overprotective and so worried about him being exposed to any sort of danger in life that she basically chose to shield him from the world. And now the kid is just totally screwed up.
Is to make you feel better. This is my child, it's my first, my only, my last. This is me, me, me. I feel safe when he's here. I feel better when I can see him. I feel at peace when he's in my bedroom. I feel better when I'm carrying him to the bathroom. I feel better when I have him at home and I can see him. Forget the fact that he is not getting an opportunity to observe himself overcoming obstacles. He's not building his self-worth and self-esteem by saying, man, I did that. Wow, I overcame that. I'm 13 and have a blanket. My mother cuts my meat. I can't get off the porch with my friends. That's not giving him an opportunity to say, I'm growing up, I'm strong, I'm competent, I'm able to go into the world with confidence. You're stealing that from him by not allowing him to fall and scrape his knee, by not allowing him to get bullied and overcome it. And as a result, when he gets out into the world and he has to deal with people who don't think he's a precious pie, he's just another kid in competition, he doesn't have the confidence to fight back.
I think you're totally wrong, Dr. Phil. I disagree with you, because if you talk to my child, he has plenty of self-confidence.
He does, until he gets out there and finds out that he didn't learn the developmental skills that he needed to compete with the others.
I mean, why does he have to be so competitive? What?
Because that's the real world, Gina.
It's just totally misunderstanding God's relationship with humanity. Any good parent is going to allow their children to experience life, which does involve the possibility of being exposed to deception. But you can't shield your children from everything. Otherwise, they're never going to learn to stand on their own. They're never going to learn how to overcome hardships when faced with the inevitable hardships that life throws at them. It's like a parent teaching their child to ride a bike. Of course, there is the possibility that the kid is going to fall off and bruise themselves, but the alternative is never learning how to ride a bike and missing out on life. I just want to really drive this home by showing you that, look, these are not just my own personal biases. I even asked ChatGPT to confirm this for me before I made this video. I wanted to make sure that everything I said was logically sound. I asked, does it make sense to say, because us humans have the ability to be deceived, this very concept obliterates the idea of free will? This is what ChatGPT says. This statement doesn't seem to follow logically. Having the ability to be deceived doesn't necessarily obliterate the idea of free will. Free will is generally understood as the ability to make choices that are not predetermined by factors such as genetics, environment, or divine intervention. Being able to be deceived is more about our cognitive vulnerabilities than about our capacity for free will. We can still make choices even if we are sometimes deceived or influenced by false information. Just so in case Brandon ever sees this video, just so he knows I'm not just giving my biased opinion, it really doesn't make sense. I really feel like this is an instance of Brandon allowing his personal bias, which he certainly does have, also a logical fallacy, by the way. I really feel like Brandon allows his personal bias to cloud his judgment and his intellectual abilities. This only proves how weak these atheistic arguments truly are if you apply a little scrutiny and dig a little deeper. Let me explain a personal story of mine to help illustrate how beneficial deception in our lives can actually be. This is something I've actually never told anyone, but in my early recovery from drug addiction, I had a point where I was incredibly depressed. I was struggling. So I went out to find some drugs and essentially ended up getting ripped off. This dude didn't sell me any drugs. He just stole $100 from me. And, at the time, of course, I was super upset about it. But hindsight, it very well could have saved my life. In the drug world, you deal with deception on a daily basis. And so, yes, it sucks being deceived, but it's all a part of life. I've been through some really horrible, tough situations in life, but ultimately at the end of the day, I wouldn't change any of it for anything because it's all contributed to who I am today and how much smarter I am. It's contributed to how much more compassionate I am. And so look, Brandon, I totally empathize with you, brother. To this day, I do not go to church because I've had many bad experiences going to church, but I recognize that has no bearing on Jesus. Just because those people are not a good representation of Christianity or what Christians are truly supposed to be and how they're supposed to act, that has no bearing on the truth of God and His Word. This argument doesn't work because it's logically fallacious. It's called the non sequitur fallacy, which means the conclusion doesn't follow from the premise. Anyways, that's basically all I've got. And if you've made it this far, I appreciate it. And I will see you guys in the next one.